Madam Secretary, we're going to do another 5-minute round of questions. Okay. I don't know what other members of the committee will or not be returning, but I do want to quickly turn to the debt ceiling because, as you well know, the debt ceiling is currently suspended until July 31st, just end of next month. After that point, the Treasury Department can prevent default for a brief period of time with its so-called extraordinary measures, but Congress must ultimately raise the debt ceiling to prevent a default of the full faith and credit of the United States. There are murmurings that some members of the Senate may want to try to use this as a political cudgel to extract concessions on other things. Could you speak briefly to the consequences of a default on our national debt, or even creating uncertainty around whether or not we're going to make good on our full faith and credit?
I think defaulting on the national debt should be regarded as unthinkable. Failing to increase the debt limit would have absolutely catastrophic economic consequences. It would be utterly unprecedented in American history for the United States government to default on its legal obligations. I believe it would precipitate a financial crisis. It would threaten the jobs and savings of Americans, and at a time when we're still recovering from the COVID pandemic. I would plead with Congress simply to protect the full faith and credit of the United States by acting to raise or suspend the debt limit as soon as possible. Preferably, you mentioned July 31st is the date that the debt limit suspension ends, and I would really urge that the debt limit be raised or suspended again before that. And, this is not about authorizing additional spending. This is simply about the government paying its bills, making good on the payments that are implied by the tax and spending decisions that Congress has made.
I appreciate your underscoring that very important point. This is about paying the bills that are already due and owing. Do you have an estimate as to how long use of the emergency measures would last us in this current economic environment?
Well, we're constantly trying to refine our notions on that. I don't have anything specific, but these are times, especially because of the pandemic and the programs that we're engaging in, when there is a lot of uncertainty around payment flows and the timing of payment flows. And, we don't want to just look at what is the most likely time that we could make it to with extraordinary measures. We can't tolerate any chance of defaulting on the government debt, and there is a lot of uncertainty. It's possible that we could reach that point while Congress is out in August, and I would really urge prompt action on raising the limit or suspending it.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I just want to put two issues on your radar screen. I don't expect an answer today, but so Senator Toomey and I, in the last Congress, authored the Hong Kong Accountability Act. It was passed into law. I was pleased to see the Biden administration sanction a number of officials who have been complicit in undermining democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. But that law also requires sanctions against any financial institutions that are aiding, abetting, or facilitating those individuals. And Treasury has not imposed sanctions on those financial institutions. Maybe you haven't been able to identify any such institutions.
We have not.
Yet, I think Secretary Toomey and I are in the process of asking for a briefing with respect to Treasury's capacity to monitor these things. The other thing I wanted to mention is the Brink Act. This is also legislation that Senator Toomey and I and others pushed for. that applies secondary sanctions on North Korea.
Yes.
And here there's a discrepancy because the UN panel of experts just earlier this year, found that there were huge holes in the sanctions regime, that there were Chinese entities that were essentially facilitating, payments to North Korea that would be subject to secondary sanctions. And so we do want to follow up with you on that as well.
We would be glad to discuss that and follow up.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I don't know if... Great. Madam Secretary, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for requesting this increase in funds for CDFIs, which play an essential role. And now we're going to get some firsthand accounts of how important they are. Thank you. Thank you very much.